I've always considered myself a laid-back, easygoing guy. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Emily for 8 years. We met through mutual friends, hit it off immediately, and after 2 years of dating, tied the knot in a small but meaningful ceremony. Emily was everything I could ever ask for in a partner: kind, supportive, and full of life. Or at least, that's what I thought. The first few years of our marriage were smooth sailing. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always seemed to work through them. Over time, we established a comfortable routine. I worked as a software developer, and Emily was a schoolteacher. Life was simple and predictable, and I liked it that way. It all started innocently enough, or so I believed at the time. A few months ago, Emily started mentioning an old high school friend, someone named Ryan. At first, it didn't raise any red flags. Emily was always friendly and nostalgic, and I figured she just enjoyed catching up with someone from her past. According to her, Ryan had recently moved back to our area and reached out to her on Facebook. "Do you remember Ryan?" she asked one evening while we were watching TV. "Not really," I replied, racking my brain. "Was he at our wedding?" "No," she said with a small laugh. "We kind of lost touch after high school. He's just an old friend, you know." I didn't think much of it at the time. Everyone reconnects with people on social media these days. It's harmless, right? Or so I told myself. Over the next few weeks, Emily brought up Ryan more often. She mentioned that he was going through a divorce and was having a hard time adjusting to being single again. I remember feeling a twinge of discomfort when she told me about how he'd opened up to her, but I brushed it off. After all, Emily had always been compassionate. She had a big heart and loved helping people, and that's one of the reasons I fell for her in the first place. Still, something about the way she talked about Ryan started to nag at me. It wasn't just the frequency, it was the tone. There was a warmth in her voice, a kind of excitement, that I couldn't ignore. But every time I started to feel uneasy, I reminded myself that I trusted her. We'd built a life together, shared everything. Why would I start doubting her now? One evening, I came home from work to find Emily scrolling through her phone, giggling at something. "What's so funny?" I asked, leaning over to see. "Oh, it's just Ryan," she said, quickly locking her phone. "He sent me a meme about high school. You wouldn't get it, it's kind of an inside joke." Her response was casual enough, but her quick reflex to hide the screen didn't sit right with me. I felt a small knot forming in my stomach, but I didn't press her. After all, she had every right to chat with her friends. Who was I to make a big deal out of something so trivial? But that night, as I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling while she scrolled on her phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The nagging feeling didn't go away. In fact, over the next few weeks, it grew stronger. I couldn't put my finger on it, but Emily's behavior had started to shift. It was subtle, so subtle that I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. For one, she was on her phone a lot more than usual. Emily had always been someone who preferred face-to-face interactions over texting or social media, but now her phone seemed like an extension of her hand. She'd be scrolling and typing during dinner, while we watched TV, even in bed before falling asleep. "What's got you so glued to your phone these days?" I asked one evening, trying to keep my tone light. "Oh, nothing," she replied, a little too quickly. "Just catching up with friends and reading some funny stuff online." That was another thing, she had become strangely evasive about her phone. In the past, she'd never cared if I picked it up to look at something or answer a call for her. Now, she seemed to keep it locked or out of reach at all times. I brushed it off, trying to tell myself that it was all in my head. But then there were the unexplained absences. Emily had started going out more often, usually with vague explanations like, "I'm meeting up with some friends from work," or "I'm going to grab a coffee and clear my head." When I asked who she was meeting, her answers were vague or non-committal. One Saturday, she told me she was going to a yoga class. Emily loved yoga, so it wasn't unusual, but when I offered to join her, she seemed flustered. "Oh, it's just a small class," she said, avoiding eye contact. "I don't think there's room for more people. Maybe next time." I remember sitting on the couch after she left, staring at the door and wondering why I felt so uneasy. If she was just going to yoga, why had she seemed so defensive? The next day, I noticed something else strange. Emily had started dressing differently, not drastically, but enough for me to notice. She'd always been stylish in a low-key way, but now she was putting in extra effort, even for casual outings. A new dress here, a touch of makeup there. It wasn't over the top, but it was enough to make me wonder. "Wow, you're all dressed up," I remarked one morning as she was getting ready to leave. "Oh, this?" she said, brushing off my comment. "It's just something I threw on. No big deal." I wanted to believe her, but deep down, the uneasiness was starting to feel like more than just paranoia. And then there were the moments when she seemed lost in thought, almost like she wasn't fully present. One night, while we were having dinner, I asked her a question about her day, and she didn't respond. She was staring off into space, a small smile playing on her lips. "Emily?" I prompted, snapping her out of whatever daydream she was having. "Oh, sorry," she said, shaking her head. "What were you saying?" It wasn't like her to be so distracted, so distant. I tried to convince myself that maybe she was just stressed or overwhelmed by something. But a part of me couldn't ignore the growing suspicion that it had something to do with Ryan. I told myself that I needed to trust her, that I was probably overthinking things. But as the little signs piled up, I started to wonder if my gut was trying to tell me something I didn't want to hear. And then, one day, I found the first real clue, a message notification on her laptop that she hadn't closed out. The moment I saw the message, my heart sank. It wasn't explicit or incriminating, but it was enough to plant a seed of doubt. Emily had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she went to take a shower. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second glance. I wasn't the type to snoop, and I believed in respecting her privacy. But as I walked by, a notification popped up on the screen. It was a message from Ryan. "Had such a great time catching up yesterday. Can't wait to see you again soon." I froze, my eyes glued to the screen. My first thought was, catching up. When did they meet? She hadn't mentioned seeing Ryan recently. In fact, as far as I knew, their conversations were limited to social media. The rational part of me tried to downplay it. Maybe they'd bumped into each other somewhere. Or maybe she just didn't think it was worth mentioning. But the words, "can't wait to see you again," echoed in my head, and no matter how hard I tried to brush it off, I couldn't shake the uneasiness. Before I could stop myself, I clicked on the message thread. My hands trembled as I scrolled through their conversation. Most of it seemed harmless, talk about old high school memories, updates on their lives, and the occasional joke. But as I kept reading, the tone started to shift. "Ryan, you always knew how to make me laugh. I missed having someone like you around. Emily, I missed you too. It's been so nice reconnecting," smiley face. My stomach churned. It wasn't overtly romantic, but it felt intimate. Too intimate. I kept scrolling, hoping I wouldn't find anything worse. And then, there it was. "Ryan, yesterday was the highlight of my week. I can't believe how easy it is to talk to you again. Feels like old times. Emily, same here. It's crazy how we just picked up where we left off. You always had a way of making me feel special." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Yesterday. She had told me she was meeting up with a coworker for coffee, but clearly, that wasn't the whole truth. She had been with Ryan. The sound of the shower turning off snapped me out of my thoughts. Panicking, I closed the laptop and tried to compose myself. My heart was pounding in my chest as I heard her footsteps approaching the kitchen. "Hey," she said, walking in with a towel wrapped around her hair. "What are you up to?" "Nothing, just making coffee," I replied, forcing a casual tone. She didn't seem to notice my nervousness, but I could barely look at her. My mind was swirling with questions. Why hadn't she told me she was meeting Ryan? Was there more to their relationship than she was letting on? I spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying the messages over and over in my mind. The words, "can't wait to see you again," and "you always had a way of making me feel special," echoed in my head like a broken record. That night, as Emily lay next to me in bed, scrolling through her phone, I felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over me. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, but another part of me wasn't ready. I needed more proof, more clarity. I couldn't risk accusing her without knowing the full story. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like I didn't know who she was. And that realization was both terrifying and heartbreaking. The days following my discovery were some of the most emotionally taxing I'd ever experienced. On the surface, everything between Emily and me seemed normal. She was as cheerful and talkative as ever, sharing stories about her day and asking about mine. But now, every smile, every laugh, and every casual remark felt like a performance. I couldn't stop thinking about the messages. They consumed me. I kept replaying them in my mind, analyzing every word, every emoji, every implication. Was I overreacting? Were they really just catching up, or was there something more? The ambiguity was eating me alive. I started paying closer attention to Emily's behavior, and the small, unsettling details began to pile up. She was texting more than ever, often with a slight smile on her face. When I asked who she was talking to, her answers were vague. "Oh, just the girls," she'd say, or, "a coworker had a funny story." She also seemed to be going out more frequently. Over the next week, she had plans almost every other day: coffee with a friend, dinner with a coworker, a yoga class, and even a quick errand that took over 2 hours. I wanted to believe her, but the doubt gnawed at me. One evening, while she was getting ready to head out for dinner with her work friends, I decided to test the waters. "Who's all going tonight?" I asked casually, trying not to sound suspicious. "Oh, just a couple of people from my department," she said, rifling through her jewelry box. "You don't know them?" Her tone was breezy, but I couldn't ignore the fact that she didn't mention any names. As she left the house, I stood at the window, watching her drive away. A part of me wanted to follow her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I wasn't that kind of person, or at least, I didn't think I was. That night, I couldn't relax. I paced around the house, trying to distract myself with TV and work, but my mind kept wandering back to her messages with Ryan. I hated feeling this way, paranoid, distrustful, like some jealous husband in a bad movie. But the alternative was even worse. Finally, around 10:30 p.m., Emily came home. She seemed cheerful and a little flushed, as if she'd had a great time. "How was dinner?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Really fun," she replied, kicking off her heels. "It was nice to catch up with everyone outside of work." Again, she didn't mention any names or specific details. Just vague pleasantries. As she went upstairs to change, I noticed her phone sitting on the kitchen counter. It was unlocked. My heart started pounding. I knew it was wrong. I'd always prided myself on respecting her privacy, but the need for answers was overwhelming. I picked up the phone and quickly scrolled through her recent messages. Sure enough, there was another conversation with Ryan. "Ryan, hope you're having a good time tonight. Let me know when you're free again, I miss you. Emily, I miss you too. Let's figure something out soon." I stared at the screen, the words burning into my brain. I miss you too. There was no way to misinterpret that. The sound of Emily coming back down the stairs snapped me out of my trance. I quickly set the phone back down and pretended to be engrossed in the TV. That night, as I lay awake next to her, my mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was she cheating on me, or was this just emotional? Did she even realize how much this was hurting me? I knew I couldn't keep bottling up my feelings forever. Sooner or later, I'd have to confront her. But I needed more. More proof, more clarity. More courage. The following morning, I woke up with a sense of resolve. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The messages, the absences, the changes in her behavior, it was all too much. If Emily and Ryan were hiding something, I needed to know the truth. But confronting her outright still felt premature. What if I was wrong? What if I was reading too much into things and ended up accusing her of something innocent? The thought of that possibility made my stomach churn. No, I needed something concrete. So, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I started keeping track of her movements and behavior. I wasn't proud of it, but I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my gut any longer. That afternoon, Emily told me she had plans to meet a friend for coffee. It sounded harmless enough, but her casual tone and vague explanation set off alarm bells in my head. Which friend? I asked, keeping my voice light. Oh, just Katie, she said, not looking up from her phone. You remember her, right? I nodded, though I wasn't sure if Katie even existed. I waited until she left the house, then grabbed my car keys and followed at a safe distance. My heart was pounding the entire time, a mixture of guilt and adrenaline coursing through me. I felt like a character in a bad crime drama, sneaking around and spying on my own wife. It was surreal. She drove to a small cafe on the edge of town, parked her car, and went inside. I stayed in my car, parked across the street, trying to blend in. A few minutes later, my worst fears were confirmed. Ryan walked in. I watched as he greeted her with a wide smile and a warm hug. The kind of hug that felt too familiar for two people who were just friends. They sat down at a table near the window, leaning in close as they talked and laughed. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I watched them. Emily looked happy, almost glowing, in a way I hadn't seen in months. And it wasn't me making her feel that way, it was him. I stayed in the car for nearly an hour, watching as they chatted, their body language growing more relaxed and intimate with every passing minute. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove home, my mind racing with questions and emotions. When Emily returned later that evening, she acted as if nothing had happened. How was coffee with Katie? I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Oh, it was nice, she said casually. We just caught up on life and work stuff. Her lie was so smooth, so effortless, that it sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene at the cafe over and over in my head. I thought about confronting her, about asking her why she'd lied to me, but every time I opened my mouth, the words wouldn't come. Instead, I decided to dig deeper. If there was more to their relationship, I needed to find out. The next morning, Emily left early for a meeting at work. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, staring at her empty chair, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and frustration. I couldn't shake the image of her and Ryan at the cafe, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I knew I couldn't let this go. I needed answers. As soon as Emily was gone, I went to her laptop. It was risky, but I had to know more. She was usually careful to log out of her accounts, but I'd noticed she had a habit of saving her passwords in the browser. It didn't take long to find her Facebook account logged in. My hands trembled as I navigated to her messages. Part of me wanted to stop, to shut the laptop and pretend everything was fine. But I couldn't. I clicked on Ryan's name, and the full extent of their conversations unfolded in front of me. Their messages dated back months, longer than I had suspected. It started innocently enough, with them reconnecting over high school memories. But as the weeks went on, their exchanges became more personal, more intimate. "Ryan, you've always been so easy to talk to. I've missed having someone like you in my life. Emily, I've missed you too. It's been so nice to have someone who really gets me." I scrolled further, my heart pounding. The messages were filled with inside jokes, compliments, and even a few late-night exchanges that made my blood run cold. "Ryan, can't stop thinking about yesterday. You looked amazing." "Emily, stop, you're making me blush." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It wasn't just emotional, it was flirtatious. And then I saw it. A message from a few days ago that left no room for doubt. "Ryan, I can't wait until next week. Just you and me, no distractions. It'll be perfect." "Emily, me too. I'm counting down the days." My head was spinning. What was happening next week? Where were they going? I couldn't believe what I was reading. This wasn't just a casual friendship. This was something deeper, something I had never imagined Emily was capable of. I kept reading, searching for more details. Finally, I found it, a reference to a hotel. Ryan had sent her a link to a booking confirmation, and she had replied with a heart emoji. They were planning a getaway. My hands clenched into fists as I stared at the screen. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me, anger, betrayal, heartbreak. How could she do this to me? To us? I closed the laptop and sat back, trying to process what I'd just discovered. My mind raced with questions. Had she already cheated on me physically, or was this their first attempt? Did she feel guilty, or had she convinced herself this was somehow justified? I knew I couldn't ignore this any longer. Whatever they had planned, I needed to confront her before it happened. But I also realized that this confrontation wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about deciding what came next, what I was willing to tolerate, and whether our marriage could survive this betrayal. I had no idea how she would react, but one thing was clear, our lives were about to change forever. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, my emotions swinging wildly between heartbreak and fury. My mind raced with scenarios of how the confrontation would play out. Should I be calm and composed, or should I let my anger show? Would she deny it, or would she finally come clean? By the time Emily got home that evening, I had worked myself into a state of nervous tension. She walked through the door with her usual cheerful smile, but to me, it felt like a mask, a facade she wore to hide her secrets. "Hey," she said, setting her bag down. "How was your day?" "It was fine," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "How about yours?" "Oh, you know, the usual," she said, shrugging. "Busy, but good." Her nonchalance made my blood boil. How could she act so normal, so innocent, when I knew what she was planning? I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Emily, can we talk?" I said, my voice more serious than I intended. She froze for a moment, then turned to look at me. "Of course. What's up?" I gestured for her to sit down at the kitchen table. She hesitated, her eyes searching mine for a clue about what this was all about. Finally, she sat down across from me, folding her hands in her lap. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Is there something you want to tell me?" She frowned, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean?" I said, my voice firm, "is there anything you've been hiding from me? Anything about Ryan, for example?" The mention of his name was like a spark igniting a fire. Her expression changed in an instant, her eyes widened, and a faint blush spread across her cheeks. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. "I know you've been talking to him," I continued, my voice rising slightly. "I know you've been meeting up with him. I even know about the hotel." Her face went pale, and she stared at me, speechless. For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. "Mike," she finally said, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Emily?" I shot back. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been lying to me, sneaking around, and planning a getaway with another man." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she shook her head. "I wasn't. I didn't mean for it to get this far." "Get this far?" I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. "So you're admitting it? You've been lying to me? Sneaking around with Ryan behind my back?" She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking as she began to cry. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice muffled. "I never wanted to hurt you." Her tears didn't move me. At that moment, I felt no sympathy, only anger and a deep, aching sense of betrayal. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. "A few months," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We started talking on Facebook, and it got out of hand." "Out of hand?" I said, incredulous. "You were planning a trip with him, Emily. That's not out of hand. That's a full-blown betrayal." She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "It wasn't physical, I swear. It was just talking, and meeting for coffee. I know it was wrong, but I didn't." "You didn't what?" I interrupted. "You didn't think I'd find out? You didn't think it would hurt me?" Her silence was answer enough. I stood up from the table, unable to sit still any longer. I paced the room, running my hands through my hair, trying to process everything she had just admitted. "I trusted you," I said finally, my voice breaking. "I thought we had a good marriage. I thought you were happy. Was I wrong?" "I was happy," she said, her voice trembling. "I am happy. But Ryan, he reminded me of a part of myself I hadn't thought about in years. It was stupid and selfish, and I'm so sorry. Please, Mike, I don't want to lose you." Her words hung in the air, but they did little to soothe the pain I felt. How could I believe her? How could I trust her after everything I'd discovered? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. After Emily's confession, the weight of silence between us was unbearable. She sat at the table, her face streaked with tears, while I paced the room, my emotions in turmoil. Part of me wanted to yell, to vent the anger and betrayal that had been boiling inside me since I'd uncovered the truth. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to understand. "How could you do this, Emily?" I finally asked, my voice quieter but no less pained. "How could you throw away everything we've built together for some old flame?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and shook her head. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice cracking. "When Ryan reached out, it was innocent at first. I was just happy to hear from an old friend. But then, I don't know. He made me feel seen, in a way I hadn't felt in a long time." Her words stung more than I expected. "Seen?" I repeated. "What does that mean? Are you saying I haven't been there for you? That I haven't made you feel seen?" "That's not what I'm saying," she replied quickly. "You've been amazing, Mike. You're an incredible husband. This isn't your fault, it's mine. I let myself get caught up in something stupid and selfish because I was nostalgic for a time in my life that doesn't even exist anymore." Her explanation didn't make me feel any better. If anything, it made me angrier. "Nostalgia doesn't justify lying to your husband and planning a getaway with another man," I said, my voice rising again. "Do you even understand what you've done? Do you have any idea how much this hurts?" "I know," she said softly, her tears flowing again. "I know I hurt you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Please, Mike, I don't want to lose you." I leaned against the counter, staring at her, trying to decide if I believed her. Was she genuinely remorseful, or was she just sorry she got caught? And even if she was sincere, could I forgive her? I need some time to think, I said finally. I can't just pretend everything's fine. Not after this. She nodded, looking devastated but not arguing. Take as much time as you need, she said. I'll do anything, therapy, counseling, whatever you want. I just want to fix this. Her words sounded earnest, but I couldn't shake the feeling of doubt that had taken root in my heart. The trust we'd built over 8 years of marriage had been shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. That night, I slept on the couch. I couldn't bring myself to lie next to her, not with the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. As I stared at the ceiling, the memories of our life together played through my mind like a cruel montage. The laughter, the love, the promises we'd made to each other, it all felt tainted now. I wanted to believe her when she said it hadn't been physical, but the messages I'd read and the hotel booking she'd agreed to suggested otherwise. How could I trust her when she had been so willing to hide things from me? The next morning, Emily tried to act normal, cooking breakfast and making small talk, but the tension between us was palpable. I couldn't even look at her without feeling the sting of betrayal. I'm going out for a bit, I said abruptly after finishing my coffee. I didn't tell her where I was going, and she didn't ask. I needed space, time to clear my head and figure out what I was going to do next. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, the hum of the car engine barely registering over the whirlwind of thoughts in my mind. I couldn't stay in the house, not when every corner seemed to remind me of the life I thought I had with Emily. I kept replaying her words over and over. I didn't mean for it to happen, I felt seen, it wasn't physical. They offered no comfort, only more questions. Eventually, I found myself parked at a quiet lakeside spot we used to visit when we were first dating. It was a place we'd come to escape the noise of the world and just be together. Back then, it was a symbol of our connection, our love. Now, it felt like a cruel reminder of what I was on the verge of losing. I sat on one of the worn wooden benches overlooking the water, staring at the rippling surface and trying to make sense of my emotions. I was angry, yes. But beneath the anger, there was a deep sadness, a grief for the relationship I thought we had. Questions plagued me. Was I to blame for any of this? Had I missed signs that she was unhappy? Or was this entirely on her, a selfish betrayal that had nothing to do with me? I pulled out my phone, considering calling someone to talk. But who? My family adored Emily, and I wasn't ready to tarnish her image in their eyes. My friends? I wasn't sure I wanted them to know, either. Finally, I dialed the one person I felt I could trust to give me an honest perspective, my older brother, Dave. Dave answered after a few rings, his voice warm and familiar. Hey, Mike. What's up? Hey, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. Do you have a minute? I need to talk. Of course, he said, immediately picking up on the seriousness in my tone. What's going on? I hesitated for a moment, then told him everything. The messages, the cafe, the hotel booking, Emily's confession. I didn't leave anything out, even though saying it all out loud made the situation feel even more real, and painful. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Dave sighed. Wow, Mike. I'm so sorry you're going through this. That's a lot to deal with. Yeah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do, Dave. She says she's sorry, that it wasn't physical, but how can I trust her after this? How do I even begin to move forward? Dave was quiet for a moment, then said, Look, I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you this, trust is the foundation of any relationship. Without it, nothing else works. If you think there's even a chance you can rebuild that trust, it's going to take time, and a lot of effort on both sides. But if you can't see a way past this, then maybe it's time to think about what's best for you in the long run. His words hit me hard, but they made sense. I just don't know if I can ever look at her the same way, I admitted. You don't have to decide right now, Dave said. Take your time. And don't feel like you have to go through this alone. If you need to talk, or if you need a place to stay, you know I'm here for you. Thanks, Dave, I said, feeling a small measure of relief. I really appreciate it. After hanging up, I sat by the lake for a while longer, thinking about what Dave had said. He was right, I didn't have to make any decisions right away. But I also couldn't ignore the fact that my relationship with Emily had changed forever. When I finally returned home, the house felt heavy with tension. Emily was in the living room, sitting on the couch and staring at her hands. She looked up when I walked in, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. Mike, she said softly. Can we talk? I nodded, though I wasn't sure what more there was to say. I've been thinking a lot about what I said last night, she began. And I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making this right. I'll do whatever it takes, therapy, cutting off contact with Ryan, anything. Just tell me what you need. Her words sounded sincere, but my walls were still up. I need time, Emily, I said firmly. Time to figure out if I can even begin to trust you again. Because right now, I don't know if I can. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I understand. And I'll give you all the time you need. Her response was what I expected, but it didn't make me feel any better. As I went upstairs to the guest room to sleep, I realized that the hardest part was yet to come, deciding whether our marriage could survive this betrayal, or if it was already too late. The days that followed were some of the most emotionally exhausting of my life. Emily and I existed in the same house, but it felt like we were in different worlds. She made an effort to give me space, but I could see the sadness in her eyes every time we passed each other in the hall or shared a silent meal. For me, the time alone wasn't as healing as I hoped it would be. My thoughts were a constant loop of anger, doubt, and heartbreak. I kept questioning everything, our marriage, her motives, and whether I could ever trust her again. One evening, Emily broke the silence. Mike, she said hesitantly as I sat in the living room, staring at the muted TV. I've been looking into therapists. I thought maybe we could start counseling, if you're ready. I looked at her, surprised. She seemed nervous, almost fragile, like she was bracing herself for rejection. You're serious about counseling? I asked. Yes, she said, her voice steady but her eyes pleading. I know I can't fix this on my own. And I know I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. But I want to try. For us. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to stay angry, to hold on to my resentment, but there was something in her voice that felt genuine. Okay, I said after a long pause. We can try counseling. But don't think this is some quick fix. It's going to take more than a few sessions to rebuild what you broke. I know, she said, nodding quickly. Thank you, Mike. I promise I'll do whatever it takes. True to her word, Emily scheduled our first session for later that week. I was skeptical, unsure if talking to a stranger would help, but I figured it was worth a shot. The therapist's office was small but inviting, with warm lighting and a couple of cozy chairs arranged around a coffee table. Emily and I sat next to each other, though the distance between us felt vast. Our therapist, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Hayes, greeted us with a kind smile. She began by explaining how the sessions would work and emphasized the importance of honesty and openness. Why don't we start with what brought you both here today, she asked, her gaze shifting between us. Emily looked at me, as if waiting for permission to speak. When I nodded, she began. I betrayed Mike's trust, she said, her voice trembling. I reconnected with an old friend, Ryan, and I let things go too far. I never wanted to hurt him, but I did. Dr. Hayes nodded, her expression neutral. Mike, how did this make you feel? The question seemed so simple, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. My throat tightened as I tried to put my emotions into words. I felt blindsided, I admitted. Like the person I thought I knew, the person I trusted most in the world, was someone completely different. It made me question everything about our marriage. Emily wiped a tear from her cheek but stayed quiet, letting me continue. I keep wondering what I did wrong, I said, my voice breaking. What I could have done differently to stop this from happening. But at the same time, I'm angry that I'm even in this position, that she made this choice without thinking about what it would do to me. Dr. Hayes leaned forward slightly, her tone empathetic. It's completely normal to feel conflicted, Mike. Betrayal shakes the foundation of trust, and rebuilding it is a long process. The fact that you're here, willing to have this conversation, shows that you haven't given up completely. Her words were comforting, but they didn't erase the pain. Still, I appreciated having a space where I could voice my feelings without fear of judgment. Over the next hour, we delved deeper into the roots of what had happened. Emily talked about her struggles, feeling unappreciated at work, the monotony of daily life, and how reconnecting with Ryan had given her a sense of excitement she didn't realize she was missing. It was selfish, she admitted, her voice thick with regret. I should have talked to you about how I was feeling instead of turning to someone else. I see that now. Hearing her take accountability was a small comfort, but it didn't erase the hurt. When the session ended, Dr. Hayes encouraged us to keep the lines of communication open at home and to take things one step at a time. As we walked to the car, Emily looked over at me. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I nodded, unsure how to respond. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not yet. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way forward. Counseling became a weekly ritual for Emily and me. Each session brought out more truths, some of which were harder to hear than others. I learned about the small ways our relationship had eroded over time, things I hadn't noticed or hadn't wanted to acknowledge. Emily admitted that she had felt invisible in our marriage. "It's not an excuse," she said during one session, her eyes fixed on the floor. "But I think I was craving attention in a way I didn't even realize until Ryan came along. He reminded me of who I used to be before life got so routine." Her words stung, but they forced me to reflect on my own role in the breakdown of our relationship. Had I taken her for granted? Had I been so caught up in work and the daily grind that I'd stopped appreciating her? Dr. Hayes guided us through these difficult conversations, reminding us that rebuilding trust and intimacy would take time, and a willingness to be vulnerable. At home, things were still tense. We were civil to each other, even kind, but the warmth that had once defined our relationship was missing. I couldn't bring myself to look at Emily without seeing Ryan's name in my mind. One evening, about 3 weeks after our first counseling session, Emily approached me with a tentative expression. "Mike, can we talk?" she asked. "Sure," I said, though my tone was cautious. She sat down across from me at the dining table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I just wanted to tell you that I've cut off all contact with Ryan. I deleted his number, blocked him on social media, everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Why now?" "Because I realize now that he was a distraction," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I let myself get caught up in a fantasy, but it was never real. You're my reality, Mike. And I know I have a long way to go to earn back your trust, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her declaration caught me off guard. For weeks, I'd been questioning her sincerity, wondering if she truly regretted what she'd done or if she was just sorry she got caught. But in that moment, I saw a flicker of the Emily I fell in love with, the one who was honest and determined, even when the odds were against her. "I appreciate that," I said after a long pause. "But this isn't just about cutting him off. It's about proving to me that I can trust you again." "I know," she said, nodding. "And I will. I'll prove it every day if I have to." Slowly, we began to work on reconnecting. It started with small gestures, sharing meals without the awkward silence, taking evening walks together, and talking about things other than the affair. But the process wasn't easy. There were moments when I felt hopeful, like we were making progress, only to be blindsided by a surge of anger or doubt. One night, as we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, I couldn't stop my mind from drifting back to the messages I'd read. I imagined her typing those words to Ryan, smiling at her phone, feeling things she hadn't felt for me in years. "Emily," I said, interrupting the movie. "Why didn't you tell me how you were feeling? If you were unhappy, why didn't you just talk to me instead of turning to him?" She muted the TV and turned to face me. "I don't have a good answer for that," she admitted. "I think I was scared. Scared that if I said something, it would make things worse. Scared that maybe we'd grown too far apart to fix it." Her honesty was disarming. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it helped me understand her mindset. "I wish you'd trusted me enough to try," I said quietly. "I do now," she said, reaching for my hand. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you, if you'll let me." Despite our efforts, the doubts lingered. Every time Emily's phone buzzed or she mentioned going out, a part of me wondered if she was being truthful. I hated feeling this way, like a paranoid version of myself. At our next counseling session, I voiced my concerns. "I want to believe her," I told Dr. Hayes. "I really do. But it's hard. Every time I think about what happened, it feels like a punch to the gut." Dr. Hayes nodded. "That's completely normal, Mike. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It's a process, and setbacks are a part of that process. What's important is that you communicate these feelings to Emily and work through them together." When the session ended, I turned to Emily as we walked to the car. "I need you to be patient with me," I said. "I want to move forward, but it's going to take time." "I understand," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "And I'm not going anywhere." Her words were reassuring, but I knew the road ahead would be anything but easy. As weeks turned into months, the tension in our house began to ease, but it was replaced by a cautious, almost fragile peace. Emily and I were trying, but the damage to our marriage loomed like a shadow over everything we did. True to her word, Emily cut off all contact with Ryan. She showed me her blocked contacts list and even handed over her phone on several occasions to prove she had nothing to hide. She went out of her way to be transparent, sharing her schedule with me and inviting me to join her for outings she previously might have done alone. Despite her efforts, I found it hard to let my guard down completely. Every time I felt a flicker of trust, a memory of her messages with Ryan would creep in, reminding me of how easily she had lied before. One night, as we were having dinner, Emily broke the silence. "Mike," she said, her voice careful. "I was thinking, maybe we could take a trip together. Just the two of us." The suggestion caught me off guard. "A trip?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," she said, her tone hopeful. "We've been so caught up in everything that we haven't had a chance to just be together. Maybe getting out of the house, away from all the reminders, would be good for us." I hesitated, unsure how to respond. The idea of a trip sounded nice, but part of me wondered if it was too soon. Could we really enjoy ourselves without the weight of her betrayal hanging over us? "I don't know," I said finally. "Let me think about it." She nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course. No pressure." The next morning, as I sipped my coffee and stared out the kitchen window, I found myself considering Emily's suggestion. Maybe a change of scenery was exactly what we needed. Counseling had helped us open up to each other, but we hadn't had many moments of joy or connection since everything came to light. By the time Emily came downstairs, I had made up my mind. "About that trip you mentioned," I said as she poured herself a cup of coffee. "Let's do it." Her face lit up with a mixture of surprise and relief. "Really?" "Yeah," I said, managing a small smile. "But nothing too fancy. Just something low-key." "Of course," she said quickly. "I'll take care of everything." "Thank you, Mike." Her gratitude caught me off guard. It was a reminder of how much she was trying, how determined she was to make things right. A week later, we packed our bags and drove to a cabin about 2 hours away. It was a quiet, secluded spot near a lake, surrounded by trees just beginning to change color for the fall. The first day was awkward. We spent most of it making small talk and avoiding deeper conversations, as if we were both afraid of saying the wrong thing. But by the second day, something shifted. We went for a hike that morning, and as we walked along the trail, we started to talk, really talk. Not just about what had happened, but about our hopes, fears, and the things we wanted for the future. At one point, Emily stopped and turned to me. "I know I've said this before, but I need you to know how sorry I am, Mike. For everything. I can't change what I did, but I promise you, I'll never take you or our marriage for granted again." Her words were raw, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel: forgiveness. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "And I know this hasn't been easy for you, either. But if we're going to move forward, we have to do it together." She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. Together. That evening, we sat by the lake, watching the sun set behind the trees. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of calm. The pain of Emily's betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it no longer felt like the defining feature of our relationship. When we got back home from the trip, I noticed a subtle shift in the way Emily and I interacted. The walls between us weren't entirely gone, but they were starting to come down. The trip had reminded us of the connection we once shared, a connection that felt worth fighting for. But returning to reality wasn't easy. The reminders of Emily's betrayal were everywhere: in the kitchen where I had read the messages, in the living room where we'd had our first confrontation, even in the quiet moments when her phone buzzed with notifications. Emily continued to make an effort to rebuild trust. She was transparent about her schedule, often checking in with me throughout the day, and she made it a point to spend more quality time with me. Sometimes it felt like she was overcompensating, but I couldn't deny that her intentions seemed genuine. For my part, I tried to be more present. I made an effort to listen when she talked about her day, to show appreciation for the little things she did, and to engage in activities we used to enjoy together, like cooking and watching our favorite shows. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when I felt a pang of doubt or a flash of anger, but I reminded myself that healing was a process, not a destination. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what you want for the future?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what do you want for us?" she said, her tone tentative. "What kind of life do you see for us moving forward?" I thought about her question for a moment. "I want a life where we don't have to tiptoe around each other," I said honestly. "Where we can laugh and be ourselves without this cloud hanging over us. I want to feel like I can trust you completely again." Her eyes softened. "That's what I want too," she said. "And I'm willing to work as hard as it takes to get us there." Her response gave me a sense of hope, but it also reminded me of how far we still had to go. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, and the wounds from her betrayal were still raw. One day, while I was working from home, Emily approached me with an envelope in her hand. "What's that?" I asked, setting my laptop aside. "It's something I've been meaning to give you," she said, sitting down next to me. "It's a letter." "A letter?" She nodded. "I've been writing it over the past few weeks. It's everything I've wanted to say but didn't know how to put into words." I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to read it. But the look in her eyes told me that this was important to her. "Okay," I said, taking the envelope from her. "I'll read it later." "Take your time," she said, standing up. I hope it helps." That evening, after Emily had gone to bed, I opened the envelope. Her letter was several pages long, written in her neat handwriting. In it, she detailed her regrets, her apologies, and her commitment to rebuilding our marriage. She didn't shy away from the pain she had caused or the mistakes she had made. She wrote about how reconnecting with Ryan had made her realize how much she valued what we had and how she would never let herself take it for granted again. By the time I finished reading, my emotions were a mix of sadness, anger, and a strange sense of comfort. Her words didn't erase the past, but they showed me that she was serious about moving forward. The next morning, I thanked her for the letter. It meant a lot, I said simply. I'm glad, she said, her voice soft. Life didn't go back to normal after that, it wasn't that simple. But for the first time, I felt like we were truly working toward a new version of normal, one built on honesty and mutual effort. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was starting to believe that, together, we could find our way. As we sat in silence, Emily reached for my hand. I hesitated for a moment, then laced my fingers with hers. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant, a step toward rebuilding what we had lost. In that moment, I realized that healing wasn't about forgetting what had happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about choosing to move forward, even when it felt difficult. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we could make it through this. As time went on, Emily and I began to find a rhythm in our efforts to rebuild our marriage. Counseling sessions continued to provide a safe space for us to share our feelings, and gradually, the anger and resentment I had carried started to give way to understanding. But forgiveness was still elusive. I hadn't spoken the words aloud to Emily yet, even though she had apologized countless times. Part of me wondered if saying, "I forgive you," would feel like I was erasing what she'd done, as if the pain no longer mattered. Then, one evening, we faced a test that would challenge how far we'd come. It was a Friday night, and Emily was cooking dinner while I sorted through mail at the kitchen table. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and out of habit, my eyes flicked toward it. The name, Ryan, lit up the screen. My stomach dropped. Emily saw it too. Her face went pale, and she quickly grabbed the phone, staring at it like it was a bomb about to detonate. "What's he doing texting you?" I asked, my voice cold. "I don't know," she said, her hands shaking. "I haven't spoken to him since I blocked him." She opened the message and showed it to me without hesitation. "Ryan, hey, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're doing okay." I read the message twice, my emotions swirling. On one hand, it wasn't overtly inappropriate. On the other, just seeing his name again felt like a slap in the face. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice tight. "I'll delete it," she said immediately. "And I'll block him again." She didn't hesitate. She showed me as she deleted the message and reblocked his number, then set her phone back on the counter and looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mike, I didn't ask for this," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want anything to do with him. Please believe me." I searched her face for any sign of deceit, but all I saw was fear and sincerity. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a deep sense of trust in her actions. "I believe you," I said finally, my voice softening. But seeing his name again, it just brought everything back. "I know," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "And I hate that. I hate that I put you through this, that I made you doubt me. But I promise you, Mike, he's not a part of my life anymore. You are." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, I felt the weight of forgiveness start to lift from my heart. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Emily. "I need to say something," I said, my voice hesitant. She looked at me, her expression cautious. "I forgive you," I said. The words felt heavy, but also freeing. I don't mean that everything is perfect or that I've forgotten what happened. But I'm ready to let go of the anger. I want to move forward, Emily. With you. Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached for my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "I promise, Mike, I'll never take this for granted again." We lay there in silence for a while, her hand in mine, the air between us filled with a sense of tentative peace. For the first time in months, I felt like we were truly on the path to healing, not as individuals, but as a team. Forgiving Emily was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also one of the most necessary. The anger and resentment I'd carried for months had been eating away at me, clouding my judgment and keeping me from seeing the bigger picture. Letting go of that burden didn't mean forgetting what had happened, it meant choosing not to let it define our future. The weeks that followed felt lighter somehow. Emily and I began to reconnect in ways we hadn't for years. We started making time for each other, not just in big gestures, but in the small, everyday moments that had once been the foundation of our relationship. We cooked meals together, shared stories about our days, and even picked up old hobbies, like going to trivia nights at a local bar. These moments didn't erase the pain of the past, but they reminded us of why we fell in love in the first place. Counseling remained a key part of our journey. Dr. Hayes helped us address the lingering doubts and fears that occasionally resurfaced, and she guided us in setting boundaries and rebuilding trust. Emily was unwavering in her commitment to transparency, and over time, my instinct to doubt her began to fade. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me. "I know I don't deserve it, but I just want to say thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "For giving us another chance," she said, her voice soft. "I know how much I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But you didn't give up on us, even when you had every right to." Her words struck a chord in me. "I didn't give up because I knew there was still something worth saving," I said. "But it wasn't just me. You've been putting in the work too. If we're still standing, it's because we both fought for this." She nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "And I'll keep fighting. Every day." The moral. Looking back on everything we went through, I've come to realize that forgiveness and healing aren't just about the other person, they're also about yourself. Holding on to anger and bitterness would have only dragged me down, preventing me from finding peace. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to be vulnerable again. Emily and I still have our moments of doubt and struggle, but we've learned that communication and honesty are non-negotiable. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that relationships aren't perfect. They're messy, complicated, and sometimes painful. But if both people are willing to put in the effort, to own their mistakes and fight for each other, there's hope. I'm not saying every relationship can or should be saved, sometimes, the damage is too great. But in our case, I'm glad I chose to give us another chance. Because at the end of the day, love isn't just about the good times. It's about weathering the storms together, learning from them, and coming out stronger on the other side. And for the first time in a long time, I believe Emily and I have a future worth fighting for.